So here we are in January 2022, and it's a great opportunity for us to look at the year ahead with some hope and optimism and all that kind of naivety that everything's going to be beautiful and wonderful, and actually make some predictions as to what we're going to see in the year ahead. Well, of course, the very nature of making predictions means that we're going to be wrong, so you can almost guarantee that at least some of these things will be wrong, but I'm pretty confident that a few of them might be right. Actually, I've got three things. So I've got three things I want to talk about. They're not all things that I particularly want or want to see the outcome, but they're things that I think will happen in the industry. So I'm going to start with one of the things that I'm not that keen on, which we saw a lot of last year, which is the proliferation of trendy colors. So clearly this was a move taken from some of the fashion industry or the more fashionable product categories in the market, and I'm thinking of, well, for fashion brands and jewelry and, you know, watches and those sorts of things, where you get these custom designer colors that come out in limited editions and they sell for premium prices. And for whatever reason, the coffee industry has latched onto this idea, and it's a terrible idea for the coffee industry because whilst, I don't know, a Rolex timepiece with a special color, limited edition, may well sell for a premium in the future if you can get one. The same is not necessarily true. In fact, I would say the same is absolutely not true for your espresso machine or grinder. So we saw the likes last year of Malkonig coming out almost monthly with a new color for their EK43 grinder range, and we had some truly horrendous ones on there. I think Lovely Lavender was my least favorite. Actually, the pink was quite nice. The pink was quite nice. Pink, for some reason, it's always cool. But they had some horrible greens and lavenders and things like that. La Marzocco jumped on the bandwagon with some truly horrendous statement that they made about going back to their roots, and that's why they've reimagined, you know, the color green or something. I think they called it the Florentine Special Edition. I suspect that possibly part of the reason for this is that with the challenges surrounding manufacturing and COVID in the pandemic, it's difficult for companies to be pushing out significant new features and to be in the shops and creating those new products that we're looking for. And some bright spark and marketing said, well, why don't we just come out with some colors? So I tell you who missed the opportunity was Victoria Arduino, because they came out with their Prima 1 already with a bunch of colors. Missed opportunity, Victoria Arduino. If you just come out in white, you know, you could have sold those colors for a premium later on. I think the sort of award of the year for the worst, for me, most egregious branding premium came from Rocket, which is a real shame because I own a Rocket, but the Rocket R58 Rafa edition. So if you're not in the cycling world, you probably don't know the name Rafa, but Rafa is a premium cycling brand. And you basically get a fancy schmancy, you know, cap or jersey or something and just pay 5 times the price for that merino wool pair of socks that you got on, as opposed to a merino wool pair of socks from somewhere else. So they did a deal, Rafa and Rocket did a deal, came out with the Rocket R58 Rafa edition, which is basically just black as opposed to silver, with, I mean, a couple of nice little touches on there. So the dials are toned down a little bit more of a cream instead of a bright white, which makes more sense against a black background. But I would have loved to have seen that black option just as an option, not even as a premium option, or 100 quid or whatever. And I actually might have taken that because it looks nice and it would be probably a lot, you know, show the dirt a lot less. But because it was aligned with the Rafa brand, it was a premium, I think, of about £600, you know, close to $1,000 on top of a 2,000. I think sort of the R58's about £2,200, and the Rafa edition was 2,700. You know, you get the Rafa name on there, they put Rafa on the knobs. Is that worth 500 quid? I put that money into a grinder. I don't know. I'm sure they did. They made a limited edition. I expect they were all sold out. This year I expect to see that continue, I'm afraid to say, partially because of the continued lockdowns in Europe and the manufacturing challenges that those companies will face, but also partially because I think people are buying them and they're getting away with it for a bit, but people will get bored of it. Give it another year, and I think after this next year they'll have to come up with something new. So that's number one. I think fashionable colors, I'm afraid, are going to be here for another year. Number two, this is more interesting. So I started with the boring. I should have started with the interesting one, shouldn't I? Oh, I blew it. I'm not going to go back and redo it. Last week I did a review of the One Espresso JX Pro, and Jonathan Jones sent in this video.
Nicholas Baskets, it's a response to your video because I think I can look just as dishevelled as you do.
Dishevelled, you say? Okay, well, I'm going to take that on the chin. I'm a grown-up, I'm an adult. I can take that kind of criticism, those kinds of constructive observations, and that's absolutely not a problem at all. I'm not going to be childish about it. There will be no retaliation. I'm not going to, for example, show anyone those photographs of you getting drunk and partying in Skopje. Number two, I think it's time. I think the time is now. It's a zeitgeist moment for the espresso manufacturer companies to get into reinventing, let's call it reimagining, okay? To reimagine the steaming function on their machines. So Breville, Sage have been doing this for a while. They've had the little thing you push down and you put a knob and whatever, and it just steams it automatically. And all the people who are more serious into their coffee, like myself, may have been tempted to look down on that function and talk about how it's not as good as if you were to do it yourself, which is true in some circumstances. If you're good at steaming milk, it certainly is true. If you're not so good at steaming milk, it may not be true actually. But it was sort of limited. And I'm talking from experience here. I've had a couple of Sage machines which I bought and sold for testing. And I can say that actually they did a decent job of frothing milk, and it took a lot of frustration out for some people who were new, who wanted to make coffees at home and didn't have or want to spend the hours and hours of time learning how to stretch and froth milk properly. They could put it in there and they could get a decent result. But take a look at some new companies coming out. There's some new technology, and I'm thinking of a company called Perfect Mousse as an example. So Perfect Mousse has it's more of I think a higher end, probably more commercial shop oriented steaming attachment. And there's actually two versions. One attaches to your espresso machine and one standalone. And these, I think, are really aimed for coffee shops where they want to be able to steam milk and maybe not necessarily put the training into baristas, or they've got a high turnover of staff and it's difficult to get them all trained. But you want to have that consistency. So when you're in a shop, consistency is very important. You don't want to be an amazing superstar for one customer and let another customer down. That inconsistency doesn't help you. So I think it's a great opportunity this year for companies to start to reimagine their steaming functions. I don't think we'll see anything come out from them this year. Again, I think the challenges of lockdown will prevent that. But I think we'll start to, maybe towards the end of the year, see announcements. Maybe Host Milano this year, we'll see some announcements. So I'm going to predict, be brave in that one, and say that I think we're going to see some new technology coming around on the steaming functions on our espresso machines. I'd like to take 20 seconds just to thank one of our sponsors. And if you've not heard of them, I'm going to introduce you to a world of amazing coffee. Peabury Coffee Roasters source and roast some of the best coffees in the UK. I've spent time at their roastery, and I can tell you that they genuinely care about every batch of coffee they roast and deliver. Use the link in the notes to get 10% off every order of coffee you make with Peabury. So, number three. We're around to number three. This is the final one. And this is sort of a bit of an easy one, actually. I'm sort of sure I'm going to get this one right because the trends are already emerging. Single dose grinders. We're going to move away from these big hopper grinders into, I think we're going to see more and more manufacturers doing single dose grinders. But here's the thing, I think we're going to start to see the single dose grinder market come down markets, that's not the right word to say, come sort of maybe more commoditized. So at the moment, you're talking about the Lagom P64 or P100s, which you can't get, or the sort of even the more expensive ones, whose name now I forget, well, even the EK43, you know, that's a single dose. You can use that as a single dosing grinder. There's 3 or 4 of them out there. The Weber is actually one I'd love to have the Weber, but I mean it's big and it's, you know, you can't get it anyway, and it's just $3,500. So I think some of those grinders are going to start, either those companies are going to start making a lower end version for the $1,000 sort of price range, maybe even sub $1,000 price range of high quality single dosing grinders, or we're going to see maybe some new entrants into that market. One company who I think potentially is well suited to do that is Lagom. So just take a look at what they're doing. They're moving quite fast, and they're producing quite a few interesting. I mean, they've got the Lagom Mini, which doesn't really appeal to me because it's maybe more oriented towards pour over coffees. But they've already got the Lagom P100, the P64, the Lagom Mini. They've got, I think, got an electric grinder. Very interesting company, and I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to reinvent and to level the playing field in elegant single dose grinding technology for the home market. I think that's going to be a very interesting space to watch. I think the people like Monolith and Weber, they're going to probably stick at the high end. Niche will be an interesting one. I don't think, everyone keeps on saying, when's Niche going to come out with the Niche 2? I don't think they will, actually. I don't think they need to. They continuously sell out. I think for the next year at least, maybe what you'll see is, I mean, what they could do, of course, is come out with a new color. I can't believe I'm saying that. I'd hate them to do that. Please don't do that, Chris and Son. But they could do that if they ever, you know, sales ever sort of start to lag a little bit. Come out with a special edition, and you know, a green or a pink niche. Ooh, pink niche. That would go. Do you know what? A pink niche that would go over very well with a lot of people, but not me. But I think they could also come out with some slightly more premium materials. I don't think they need to change the design. They put a lot of thought into that design. I don't think they're necessarily going to change it because for the price point, it's still hard to beat. $500 or whatever it is in pounds. I think 300 quid. Is it that? I don't know what it is. Anyway, at that price point, it is relatively unbeatable in the single dose market. But the only complaint people do have is sometimes that the materials feel a bit cheap. So what they could do is to make some slightly more premium materials, but keep the design the same, maybe add a different color or some color accents, and I think that would keep them in the market going for another 3 years. So there you have it. What are your thoughts? I'd be interested to know, I'm really interested to know genuinely what your thoughts are and your predictions for the year ahead. What are we going to see? Is there anything that's going to be really exciting this year, or is it going to be a year of treading water? Do let me know, like and subscribe, of course, and we'll see you next week.